Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and a warm welcome to all our guests around the world, wherever you are, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a delight to have you join us. Today, we're in conversation with Amy Armstrong, a conflict resolution specialist, skills we all need to be getting better and better at. Really looking forward to the conversation. So thank you for joining us, Amy.
You are welcome. I appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to diving in. But before we do, we need to give you your proper introduction. So Jon's going to take us through the bio.
I'm going to do that. And I should also say, for those who are seeing us, because some of our audience listen to us, some actually see us on video. We all happen to be wearing gray today. I don't know what's going on. Andrea and I are both wearing gray. It's a gray day. Mind, it's raining around the world today as we're recording, so maybe that's what it is. But anyway, that's an aside.
Not planned.
Not planned. So right, let me give Amy her due introduction. So Amy Armstrong is a conflict resolution specialist, bringing keys for resilience from the courtroom to the bedroom. I love the way she puts that there. Mm-hmm. She is a licensed social worker who coaches leaders in business, education, and at home to master boundaries so they can break free from the anxiety of conflict. Conflict is something that can trouble a lot of us. So clients learn to negotiate productively and stay confident and calm in even the most heated challenges with difficult personalities. We don't know any of those, do we? No difficult personalities around.
Here goes this conversation.
Exactly. Anyway, Amy founded the Center for Family Resolution, a trusted source for innovative conflict resolution with an emphasis on working with high conflict co-parenting. She applies practical, actionable steps at the intersection of family law and mental health. Her work also extends into New York City public schools and into corporate arenas. Additionally, Amy is the Director of Education with the Center for Coach Development, an authorized training program of the International Coaching Federation, that's the ICF. This highly interactive program is for professionals who want to up-level their communication skills or gain global recognition as a professional coach. So there you go. Lots and lots to talk about to get into there.
Well,
where are we going to go with this?
It sounds like, Amy, you just jump right into the middle of the pressure points in the courtroom with co-parenting and the boardroom with teams and just with conflict in general. It sounds like you're very comfortable in that space. We want to know the how and the what of what you do. But before that, where did all this come from? Where did this passion for supporting people, helping people get through in a very positive way conflict situations, where did that passion come from?
I'm glad you started there. And it's easy for me to talk about now. I did it all wrong for 45 years.
Wow.
I tried to be the good girl, the nice girl, the accommodating daughter and wife. And I never learned how to tell the truth because I was too afraid of conflict. And so I tried to dance around it and try to orchestrate my relationships so the conflict would stay low. And of course, that's the opposite of what we need.
Indeed.
So once everything fell apart for me, my marriage ended, my identity was completely shaken because I didn't know how to stand on my own 2 feet. And it was quite scary, actually. Fortunately, I had a good friend who was able to point out to me that I was trying to orchestrate my world without any sense of what was really true for me. And so she very gently but clearly helped me start to practice being a truth teller. And folks, I was afraid of that because every woman I knew that had boundaries and was able to stand up for herself, she came across to me as very harsh and prickly and self-centered. And I knew that wasn't me. And so over the next few years, probably 3 to 5 years, that it really took for me to develop a way for me to tell the truth and still be true to my values of warmth and kindness and generosity and connection, because I simply wasn't willing to set boundaries that would make the problem worse by pushing people away or setting them off as though I was uncaring.
Wow.
So it really was my own life, my own discomfort, my own suffering that forced me to create a new path to connect with people that really felt authentic.
That's so amazing. I'm reading this book that talks about in the wilderness, that's where we really grow. And we get into this wilderness space, uh, instead of fighting it, discover where we really are and what we need to learn.
But I love the way
that, yeah,
I was gonna say I love the way you put it there, though, Amy, which is yes, learn to tell the truth, but do it while staying true to your values. I think I wrote down here
kindness. I heard
kindness,
that.
warmth, real values there. Because then any number of people that we have come across who are the other end of the spectrum, they have no problem telling the truth, but they tell the truth in a way that comes across as condemning, as critical. They're being honest. They're absolutely telling the truth, but it doesn't leave any room for a relationship after that.
Yeah.
Well, I actually am not so sure it is the truth, because a lot of people that come off really harshly, maybe they're protecting their own ego, but I don't know that they're really speaking to their core. I think even in that situation where someone comes across as uber confident and they don't care what you think, I don't really believe it. I think at the end of the day, when we truly are telling the truth, there's a little bit of vulnerability that comes through. And if it doesn't come through, I would question if that person is really at their most raw place, or if it's just the opposite side of what I was doing and they're trying to portray themselves as so tough that they don't need to care about you.
That is so insightful. And it's like a light bulb just went on. I was going to say went off, went on when you said that, because like you say, it's probably the defensiveness that's coming through protecting the real truth, because it will be too vulnerable to speak the truth. Wow. Tell us some more. So that's amazing. You went through this, and what you had to say is already so empowering for women in particular who feel like to be a woman, to be more feminine, and the more you end up being accommodating and being a
Right.
people pleaser, because speaking your truth can feel too dangerous if you get it wrong.
Yeah, it's a social risk.
Yeah, it is. It is. How did you do that? How did you make the change? And what would you say to others to do it, especially to women in a similar situation?
Yeah. So I like how you just mentioned people pleasing, because that's a very common style of addressing conflict. Some people are just complete avoiders, where there's just no engagement at all. People pleasing requires more engagement, but still not being true to your own needs. Then there's people that are more challengers, where they're willing to speak up for their own needs, but not necessarily showing much compassion toward the other. And and then there's folks that are really willing to partner. And that's the way I like to describe what happened for me, and what we really can use as a benchmark for ourselves to know when we're telling the truth is, what does the partnership look like? Now, granted, there's lots of relationships where we don't want a partnership. We just want to function. Maybe it's someone with whom we work. Maybe it's someone that we're sharing children with, but not in a romantic relationship with anymore. So partnership is definitely a choice. But all the 4 habits that you teach us, those are the skills I would really look to when we're choosing to partner.
Yeah.
So choice is really the key, because those of us that have been hurt by relationships, we can even use the word trauma a lot of times. Choice is what helps us step out of victim mode and into truly being empowered. And so the thing that makes me smile, I just broke out into a smile, What I love about choice is we get to experiment. We get to try on sharing a little bit, sharing a little less, setting a boundary, seeing what happens, and having a relationship with ourselves, partnering with our own nervous system and our own level of anxiety to see where we're willing to stretch, where we're willing to engage, and where we prefer to set a boundary and gracefully say no thank you. This is the point in the conversation where I'm going to take a break. I'd like to maybe give it some thought. How about we reconvene tomorrow? I'll call you at 5:00. So it's giving ourselves permission to really check in and see the level to which we are willing to engage in a wholehearted way. And when we need to set that boundary that says, thank you, this is the point where I'm going to step out.
I love that.
And we do it gracefully by catching it soon enough before we explode, which requires a good deal of self-awareness so we can check in and know if our anxiety's gotten the best of us and we're in that fight or flight mode, or if we've shut down, or if we really have a little bit of space left in a working conversation where we truly are open and curious and willing to try on a new idea.
There is so much in there. I mean, I'm hearing you speaking. I wasn't going to go down the controversial route, but we were watching something the other day, a program we haven't watched before, but in the UK, I don't know if you've come across it. There's a program called Married at First Sight. Have you come across that program out there?
No, I'll check it out.
Literally, they bring together couples that have never met, and the experts pair them, and they literally turn up at the altar and they get married at first sight.
Wow.
And then they've got to go and work it out.
Yeah.
And some of them clearly work, and a lot of them clearly don't work.
Yeah.
But interestingly, watching the program, watching them go through that, you realize, and the point that you were making just now, it's all about getting yourself in order first, knowing yourself, knowing that you want to do this, make the right choices, be able to have your boundaries in place. There's so much about getting yourself right first to then be able to have a relationship, because if you're not right, it's just going to crumble every time.
And I
you
love
go into that.
Bad habits at that point.
Yeah,
exactly. And I love the way you said, put boundaries in place,
Right.
but doing it gracefully, still being true to who you are and the way you want to turn up in the world for others, but knowing when you're being pushed to the limit and stopping just before, so you can still be graceful in setting that boundary.
Yeah.
I think I share a personal
Please.
story.
I was going to ask
exactly. I was just going there. Questions, examples.
So my husband asked me several weeks ago, he said, could we agree not to talk about politics? Because, of course, politics in the U.S. right now are just through the roof.
Yeah.
You think?
And, and so he just wanted us to make an agreement. Let's not bring that into our marriage. We have a lot of differences in the way we see some of the candidates. And he said, could we not talk about that? And I said, sweetheart, no, I won't agree to that. But I said, I agree not to fuss about it. Right? I agree not to let it become a thorn for us. But I want to learn from you. I want to know what it is about this person or that person that you relate to. I really am curious, but let's be aware. Let's check in every few minutes and see if we've reached our threshold so that it doesn't turn into fussing or bickering or tension. But why can't we just check out a few questions with each other, a few thoughts with each other? What did you read today? What did you hear today? And just see if there's something there that might be engaging, because both of us like intellectual stimulation. We like to check out new ideas, right? Maybe there's a new way of saying something that is more meaningful or more helpful or more thoughtful. And we're willing to do that. But he got such a smile on his face because he knew he could trust me, that I'm not going to push my opinions. We're going to check in and know what the threshold is for us to remain partners while we have that difficult conversation.
That is so empowering, just what you said there, because as you know, for so many couples, it's the thing that's too difficult to talk about,
Right.
or that becomes that trigger that escalates very
Right.
quickly, and we just back away from it because we're not doing it well. But
Well, and we
just,
won't do it perfectly.
yeah,
We will go over the line a few times, and then we'll catch ourselves, and we'll probably need 5 minutes to regroup, and then we'll be done talking about it for the night. We will not do it perfectly. It's just we don't want to fall into avoiding,
yeah,
where
Yeah.
our lives become too cautious and too, really lose that courage to stretch a bit.
yeah.
And we don't
What
want
we
to do
talk
that.
about, you don't want to create no-go areas. You
Right.
can't talk about the money, or you can't talk about
Right.
this particular issue. And sorry,
That's great.
one more thing. Just the way you said, it's that vulnerability
Mhm.
and that trust. And there's another word that you said, that keeps the curiosity, so you can talk about these things being, I suppose it's the heart position of being
Mhm.
curious to really understand how the other person is thinking, rather than just wanting to
Right.
offload or impose your
Right.
opinion. Yeah,
Well,
brilliant.
I use this sort of blueprint that I keep in the back of my mind all the time, that I use the acronym VOICE, VOICE.
Mhm.
And it starts with a V, which means vision. In other words, what's the point? What's
Mhm,
important to you about even having this conversation,
Mhm.
right? If you don't have a vision of partnership, if you aren't interested in learning, growing, challenging, if your vision is really to just keep things chill, you're going to have a very different decision about which conversations in which you're going to engage.
mhm,
It's just so often we don't stop at that V, that vision, for just a few seconds
Mhm.
to make a conscious choice of whether or not we want to even engage in the
mhm.
conversation. And so if there's no vision worth having, right, we're going to move on.
Yeah.
And then once we choose, yes, let's give this a try. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe this could be interesting or fun or growth for us. Then we can go into the rest of the blueprint, which is to look at your options and
Mhm.
see where you
Mhm.
have influence, and look at your choices of what you're really willing and able to do. And then the E is really our point of celebration. Am I empowered? Am I really stepping into my best energy here? And that's how we can refine over time our blueprint for how we want to engage in difficult conversations. So it's just getting clear on that vision. O is for options, I is for influence, C is for choices, and the ultimate is that E, that energy, the elevating, the empowerment. So all those ways that we can know
Yeah.
what's really right for us.
Love that. It's great. It's great to see and to have a practical tool like that.
Mhm.
In practice, I know in my mind, I'm starting to think. Okay, voice, options, influence. What was the
Well,
choices?
vision,
Vision. I beg your
Yeah,
pardon.
influence,
Options,
choice,
influences, choices, and then
you
energy.
got
energy.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
How,
how? I was gonna say, in practical terms, what is that? How does that play out though? When you're talking to people and
like
you're
co-parents is what I was going to
co-parenting, you're
ask.
suggesting, okay, here's a tool, use it. Are there any examples you can give,
Yeah,
either from your own example or from couples you've worked with, people you've worked with, and you've actually said this is how it actually plays out?
sure. So I would say the number one signal for folks is if we're starting to feel defensive, something's
Hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
Something's off. Most people don't enjoy that feeling.
Yeah.
Some people, the great debaters, may love getting worked up. Excuse me. But once we feel defensive, that's our clue to check in. What is my goal here? What's
Mm-hmm.
my
Hmm.
vision?
Mm-hmm.
What's
Mm-hmm.
important to me here? Can I just sit quietly and say, I'm happy to hear you out, but not really engage in the conversation? Because when we get defensive, we are done making progress.
Yeah.
It's going to go downhill from there.
Yeah.
So that's really our signal to do a quick check-in and see what it is we're really willing and able to bring to the conversation. So the folks that I work with have had years of really bad habits where they just go play out their patterns in their relationship. Often one is more of a avoider, one is more anxious. They're, just playing out these patterns, this sort of dance of you say this, then I say this, then I criticize you, then you criticize me, then you shut down, then I come after you and try to get you to not leave the room. And, I want to keep talking. And I help people see that this pattern is normal. Our brains are just trying to keep us safe. We're just trying to get to a place of peace. We all want to feel more calm. But if we can start to practice one little bit of just noticing more and more of how able am I to engage calmly in this moment, then what happens over time is we develop new habits where we can truly turn it on and off. We don't stay in the off position. We don't stay in the on position. We're able to make a choice. And that's the point that I know that a mom and dad or a boss and an employee or some coworkers are going to be able to create something new. It requires a choice point. And it's honestly a bit of work at first until our brain learns to do that quick check-in. And so when I'm meeting with folks, we do that check-in together. Literally every 10 or 12 minutes, I'm going to do a check-in and I'm going to stop the conversation and say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you doing right now? Are you kind of done? Do you need some time to think? Would your body benefit from moving, have a walk down the hall and a sip of cold water? What would be good for you right now? And even if they think they're doing fine, it's teaching them this habit of checking in with the self, checking in with the body, checking in with the breath, so that it eventually becomes normal to just check in as you're engaging in a conversation, to just check in and see, do I want to keep this going? How are we doing? What do I need right now? What's my vision? Have I had enough? Do I need to apologize for something? Do I need to back off? Do I need to be a little more vulnerable? So we get to make choices, which helps us heal if there's been trauma. And it helps us be so empowered to truly create whatever it is that we desire.
That's amazing. That's just so empowering. Yesterday we had a conversation and with Gabor, and he was talking about noticing your heart rate. And if your pulse gets anything over 100, you're heading into danger zone. So part of the checking in could be checking in on the heart rate to see how you're doing.
But actually, another point he made, which is really interesting, is we can, with the right tools and processes in place, actually control that and get our heart rate down. Because when our heart rate is up, the reactions and the responses that come out are not always the best and most thought through. And he shared a wonderful.
We can communicate with the alarm bells in our body and choose to override the alarm bell and remind our body that we're safe in a matter of seconds. And there's a few very tangible habits that we can create. One, like at this moment, my feet are flat on the floor and I can just wiggle my toes a little bit. You would never know it in the middle of a conversation, but it reminds me that I'm in charge of my body, that I can send messages to my body. And it reminds me to exhale, to bring it down a little bit and literally remind my nervous system that I'm safe.
Wow. I love that. I want to hear some more. If you have any more tips like that, because an example that he shared with us, Gabor, on the last podcast we just did, which was, I thought, really powerful. He shared, in the States, soccer, you call it. We call it football over here. But he shared this example from the European Cup, which I know in the States you probably wouldn't have been following that, but it's a big, big thing over here in Europe. But anyway, from one of the matches there, they were monitoring the heart rate of one of the top players, a guy called Cristiano Ronaldo. And they said at the beginning of the match, his heart rate was something like 100.
100.
And towards the end, it was 150 when they were doing, really intense stuff. But at one point, he had to take a penalty. And at the point where he took the penalty, his heart rate was down to 70. He was completely under control. He got it right down and he did his shot. I'm like, how on
Wow.
earth do you do that in the middle
Under
of
so
all
much
that, under so
pressure.
much pressure?
Wow.
He said,
I
for me to
love
make this
that.
work, I've got to bring this thing down. So I'd love to hear any other tips you have to help people in the heat of
Reduce
the
the
matter.
heart rate. Yeah.
We
Get calm.
really do. We really do have control. And yes, I have a lot of tips. And one of them is that you get to choose. So for example, another one is to let your belly relax. Let it flop out, right? Many of us are used to trying to,
Get your core
get
in,
it
hold
all
it
day,
in.
right? If you can let your belly relax for a second, you're going to invite a much deeper breath, right? And the deeper your breath, the longer your exhale, the more your body knows that you're safe. Another one could be just what you do with your hands, just even putting your hands together and connecting the two sides of your brain by feeling left and right at the same time can be helpful. But the point is that you literally can train any habit to be your reminder. So mine, this is no secret, but I'm going to tell it like it is.
Go on.
When I'm really getting jacked up in a conversation, you're going to watch me do this. Because it's a very socially acceptable way to take a break.
Yeah.
If I just sip my coffee, which I normally would never do while I'm recording a show, right? But anytime I'm in a conversation, it gets me 2 or 3 seconds. That's very socially acceptable. No one knows that I'm struggling, right? But that sip for me tells my body, honey, I've got you. And I am not going to let you get outside of your values right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's this reminder that I have a part of me that is so grounded, and I give her control. And I say, will you take over for a minute? Because I like being emotional. I like being expressive. Nobody wants to talk to a robot, right? But it gives me that second to remind myself that I do have boundaries, that I can be a radical truth teller and still be true to the vision that I have for the conversation.
And I
It
love,
buys me some time to listen.
yeah, I love the way you talk about this partnership with your body in
Yes.
order to partner with the
Yes.
person that you're interacting with.
Oh, you
This
said that so well. I just want to soak that in. We're not just heads on popsicle sticks.
Yeah.
Let our body support our beautiful thinking.
Yeah.
But yes, we want our mind and our body to be one,
Yeah.
to be in sync. And the more we can be aware of what's happening with our heart rate, with our breathing, and aware of what's happening, the story we're telling ourselves, that the ego needs, the more we can stay in sync, the more we can be true to our vision and our values.
Wow.
Especially when you're interacting with somebody who really matters to you, because that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
time when you don't just let your belly flop out, you let all your bad behavior flop out
Exactly.
as well.
Well, my clients are often very high conflict co-parents with very high stakes issues. Time with their children, their
Yeah.
children's medical care, their finances, where they're going to live, right? I had a mom and dad in my office a few days ago where one of the parents was announcing that he wanted to move 2.5 hours away with the child,
Wow.
right? And so this mom is hearing about it for the first time,
Wow.
right? And so the stakes are very high. Am I going to be able to parent my child?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's so important that I, as a professional, stay in a good headspace, good mind, body awareness, so that I can co-regulate with them. So this mom could feed off of my calm state and know that we're going to have this conversation. We're going to work it through. She can feed off of me, even while her mind-body connection probably was very disconnected, at least for a few minutes, because she was so scared and, really completely out of her element just
Mhm.
hearing this news.
Indeed,
I'm
indeed.
guessing you may have had one or two sips of coffee there just to pinch things out. In the UK, as you were
You
saying that,
bet.
you made me laugh. In the UK, it's a fairly known thing in tense situations. Most people will say, "Right, let's put the kettle on. Put the kettle
I
on.
love
Go make a
that.
cup of tea." And the thing is, well, the UK is big tea drinkers here, because that then
Right.
takes a minute or two for the tea bag to percolate. So you're
Yeah.
just buying time. You're buying time,
I,
calm things down.
I'm going to use that.
I'm
I'm
going to
going
give you
to
the
use that.
line, Amy. It's don't stew, let's brew.
All right. I'm seeing that on a coffee cup in my
Yep,
future.
yep. Let's brew and just
Don't
take some
stew,
time
let's
out
On
of
a
brew.
teacup. Yeah.
time to get the mind thinking.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
much.
we get a good laugh from it, but it
Yeah.
really can be the difference between life and death. I've had families right on the edge of health emergencies because of the conflict. And the more we can build in daily habits when the conflict is not so high stakes, the more we can teach ourselves to trust our intuition, trust our breathing, and we'll be able to handle higher and higher levels of difficulty in our conversations. We can get good at this.
That is so.
Mhm.
I keep using the word empowering because it is.
Mhm.
Usually, the approach to dealing with conflict is to set your very firm boundaries and to have your anger management strategy and just
Mhm.
prepare for it to be awful, and you just do the best that you can to
Mhm.
survive the moment. But what you're saying is to love yourself more,
Mhm.
to partner with your whole body so you can
Mhm.
know that you're safe and turn up better and think more
Mhm.
creatively, not just about your needs, but the needs of the person or the people that you're interacting with, and
Right.
find that place of
Mm.
partnership and truth in
You
getting
know,
there.
I love how you said that, brought partnership back to it. Because even with someone with whom you do not want a long-term connection or
Mhm.
partnership, you're still helping get your own needs met when you're able to de-escalate the conversation.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't aren't engaged with that person long term, you're helping yourself by keeping your own heart open and by recognizing that even your own needs are met better the
indeed.
less activated you're getting in that conversation, and that
Mm-hmm.
other person can feel better even if they're going to go off and never engage with you again.
Yeah.
I'm actually running a program. I'm very excited about it, but I'm bringing together Israeli and Palestinian students.
You get
Okay.
right in there.
I do. It's actually a university in Israel that
Mhm.
is co-hosting a program with me
Okay.
where we are doing conflict management skills for professionals in the heat of all the challenges that they're facing in the Middle East. And what it just is stunning to me that we as just everyday people walking around can do this. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just for remarkably gifted people to be able to handle really high conflict. It's for all of us to do better because we're in a clearer relationship with ourselves and our own needs. We're giving ourselves permission to be whole, to get our needs met, and we're learning how to do it without making life worse for the
Mm.
other guy.
I want to jump in there. I love the way you've mentioned Israel and Palestine.
Mhm.
Clearly, an example of, shall we say, long-term conflict, unresolved
Yes,
and just ongoing, and
yes,
nobody can see an end to it. But
right.
what I want to say is, even so, whether it's that or whether it's with couples, it's great when things work out and people get to the end of the road.
Mhm,
And we with the time we've worked in
mhm.
relationship land, we know it doesn't always work out like that. Some
Right,
people just never get there. What are some
right.
of the main hurdles or blocks that you found in the people that you've worked with, where they just They just can't. They get all the advice, they get all the principles, and they think,
Right.
it'd be great if I followed it, but they just can't make that step, or there's something
Right.
is too far. What are some of the main things that you see, the blockages?
It's really, I can go back to my own errors of trying too hard. Trying too hard to get the other person to see things my way, to cooperate. I have so many words that in a very quirky way I say I don't use. For example, I try not to use the word compromise because it's really not, it doesn't necessarily feel good to feel like you have to give up something that's important to you. And so I really like to look at it that instead of focusing on what you want from the other person, even if it's cooperation, which sounds like such a great thing to want, we're still putting the focus on the other person and we're trying to get them to see it differently. We're trying to get them to change. We're trying to get them to answer our text, or we're trying to get them to speak more softly. The error comes when we try so hard and we're not allowing, we're not inviting ease. And I love a little exercise where we look at what can we release and what can we receive. So I like to release effort and struggle. And I like to receive ease and allowing. Because when we're trying so hard, it sends a message to that other person that we're trying to change them.
Yeah.
And no one likes to be told to change. Matter of fact, the least effective way for people to change is for us to tell them to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
We naturally are going to push back and step into our autonomy. So when you're finding yourself struggling and pushing and trying so hard, a friend of mine likes to call it a U-turn, meaning put it back on yourself. What can I do that's more peaceful, that's more allowing, that has more ease? Because then we become a magnet. We become attractive. We become much more, it's the feminine that allows the receiving of peace rather than trying to make it happen. You hear the difference in just how I'm saying this. So this is really advice I have for myself every day is, Amy, where are you struggling? And where can you soften and allow life to work out rather than trying to make it happen at every turn?
Yeah. And that comes back to the difference with being
It's a
true to
different
your
energy.
values rather than being harsh in your approach to the world.
It's really an allowing. What can I learn? How can I take responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, and actions here, rather than focusing on so much on what the circumstances should be or on what that other person should say and do?
You're really empowering us, but challenging us to grow up, to become more adults in the way that we turn up in the world. I'm curious though, Amy, in the high conflict situation, Israeli Palestinians meeting together, what are like the top 3 things that you would want to teach them, impart to them straight away to help them have a better conversation or help things unfold in a more positive direction? What are you going with first?
So we're not going to come up with our best skills in the heat of the moment. So number 1 would be practice. Practice calming down from a place of moderate stress rather than trying to do it differently in the heat of in the moment. So I would say practice all the time throughout your day, noticing your level of stress, discomfort, anxiety, and bringing it down a few notches. So that would be number 1, really practicing when you're more able to be aware of yourself. Number 2, I would say really falling back a lot on the skills of the 4 habits is that correcting someone is always going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So we can ask questions. I had a dad the other day wanted to point out how mother was too harsh with the children and actually had pushed a child, and he wanted to remind her that she had brought harm to the child. And I said, what if you asked a question? What if you said, how would you do it differently next time? That sets a tone right there that things can be different and that you're genuinely wanting to move things along and do things differently. So I would definitely say that anytime you want to correct another person, get help if you need to, putting it in a question or turning it into a genuine interest in what's going on with that person. And then 3, I would say, make sure that you have such good support in place. The people that are going to remind you that it's normal to get activated, that it's normal to react, and really support people that are not there to help you bash the other person, but that are there to help you envision a positive next chapter of your life. Right. So a lot of times when I'm working with folks, in the US, we celebrate Thanksgiving toward the end of November. And so here we are almost the beginning of October. That's a good length of time, 2 months. I might say to them, when you're sitting down for your Thanksgiving meal and you're thinking about what you're grateful for, what do you want to be most grateful for? Right. So we're starting to help them see that life is always changing and you're going to have a different moment a few minutes from now than you're having right now, and start to create the more preferred outcomes. And then we can back into the steps we need to take right now in order to make that dream a reality.
So we've sorted Thanksgiving, we've sorted the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we've sorted couples, schools. What do you teach kids?
I love it.
Time, so
this makes me laugh because parents always want to know what to teach their children. Of course, you know the answer. Your children are watching you. You don't need to teach them like this. You don't need to tell them anything. Share with them. Say, wow, I'm a little upset right now. I'm going to take 5 minutes and pet the dog. I'll be right back. What have you taught them in that moment, right?
Exactly.
Complete self-awareness, expanding our capacity to shift when things get tough. Children do not need to be corrected by their parents day in and day out. They know the right thing to do. Instead of reminding your child not to scream or not to talk back, say, where can we sit together for a minute while you calm down and try that again? You're not condoning their behavior, but you're saying, I'm with you. And I'm here for you. And I'm here with you while you correct your behavior yourself. So I just think parents are very misguided a lot, thinking that it's our responsibility to constantly correct our children. We just need to show them what it really looks like to be non-judgmental, to be safe, create safe spaces in our home while we absolutely enforce decent behavior, respectful behavior, and really just model that generosity with ourselves and with others in the home.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way you've put that there. I've had a similar conversation with many people, and quite often I think the challenge is achieving what we really want. Because I think any parent would say we want the best for our child. And most of us have this mindset of we want to produce this perfect child, send them out into the world, and they're going to be great people out there.
Right.
But then we do that, and the challenge we have is we do that and we risk breaking the relationship because we've tried to create this perfect child. The child doesn't want anything to do with us anymore because you're just a pain, hounding me all the time to change and do things.
Doesn't feel good.
Doesn't feel good. So you got to park some of that and just let some of those things happen. Of course, choose your battles. There's some things are going to be more important than other things, but actually focus on the relationship with the child. Build that relationship, build that connection. And then they're going to listen to you. You can have that long-term chance of staying together.
You're going to have a much higher influence with your child. The more it feels good to be with you.
Indeed.
And boundaries feel good. Boundaries can really feel good. It's important for security.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's relevant for everybody.
Mhm.
You'll have a much more engaged person on the other side of any conversation
Right.
if it feels good to be around you. If it feels scratchy or always feel judged or criticized, they'll just,
Yeah.
when they can choose to not be around you, they won't.
Right. I've heard you say it yourself. People are going to stay when they feel valued.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I love how, you're just
Yeah.
intertwining what you do with the book because they're so synergistic. We're on
Yeah.
the same page with what you're saying. We're
So
almost
good.
out of time, and I'm sure that there might be a nugget or two that you've not been able to share. Is there anything that we've not touched on that you really wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, I will say, yes, thank you. I will say that as hard as we are on other people sometimes, right? I find that people are most hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we really can practice all the skills with ourselves that, of being curious and connecting and not making assumptions and not correcting. When we really shift into a compassionate, curious mindset with ourself, we can practice all day long and we're going to be much more available to have a high quality engagement with someone else when we're able to do that for ourselves. I work with a lot of people that really find out that their criticism of others really comes out of their own sense of not feeling adequate, not feeling good enough, their own fears, their own worries about themselves.
I was just looking back at my notes there, Amy, as you're talking, seeing a lot of the comments I've made have the word practice in there. You're saying practice on yourself, get yourself right here first, practice calming down. There's a muscle we need to build. There are habits that we need. When we talk about habits that you need to develop, things that we can be doing to ensure that when we do come across to people, we come across so much better. I think from the we started this conversation, we realized it could be a long one. It's been great having you on the show, Amy. So many insights coming in from you there. How do people find out more about you? Is there anything you'd like to share with them to connect and get more resources from you?
Sure. I connect with a lot of co-parents on TikTok at Amy Armstrong Conflict Free. I have a parenting book as well called Real Time Parenting. And I love to connect with business leaders, court professionals through LinkedIn at Amy Armstrong Coach.
Okay, perfect. Well, we will put those links in the show notes. But Amy, thank you so much. It's been great having you on. I'm sure. I know everybody on listening in on this will have been inspired, will have been empowered. Will have some practical things to go away and practice on themselves, getting themselves whole, so that when you turn up to relationships, you can just do it better. You can stop trying to change the other person, getting them to be you. Yeah.
Or
so
going
much
after just your needs, leaving space to talk about both needs.
Yeah.
Partnering with yourself and your body so you can turn up better, and partnering as much as possible with other people so that you can get your needs met, and where necessary, where possible, you can help meet theirs as well. Doing it with more grace than harshness. And just trying to remember all the wonderful insights that you've
lots
given.
of nuggets.
But I love that we can continue to live out our values even under extreme pressure.
Extreme.
Yeah.
It's such a delight to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us and for all those wonderful insights. Now we have to go and practice.
Absolutely.
The next version of ourselves.
So thank you, Amy, and thank you to our guests again for joining us for another fascinating episode. We look forward to hearing from you guys when you've put some of this stuff into practice and hearing some of the results. But till the next time, well, see you next time. It's a wrap. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Amy.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform. to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.